Hi there YouTube, this is the Magnus bringing you another Total War Warhammer online ladder battle. Today I'll be commanding the Dwarfs up against the Vampire Counts. Not a matchup I would generally want to do, but with the last two patches, the Grim Engrave and the one previous, both making the Dwarfs stronger, I felt they're ready to go big time and face this sort of an opponent. Now you'll see I brought 5 of the Longbeards, 2 Dwarf Warriors, 3 Quarrelers, 1 Hammerer, 1 Grudge Thrower, 1 Thane, 2 Runesmiths, and Thorgrim Grudgebearer. A pretty strong and relatively standard Dwarf army, but I'm definitely going to play it in a non-standard fashion in that I don't go for the noob box or the dwarf box or whatever you want to call it. Instead, I'm going to go ahead and form a standard line. Now, my opponent is playing the Vampire Counts, as I mentioned, and he's brought 2 Black Knights with Lances and Barding, I believe. Yep. He also has a unit of Direwolves. He has 2 Vargheists and 2 Fellbats. He also has 2 Crypt Horrors. And out in front, he has 2 units of Zombies, as well as 3 Graveguard with great weapons, and Manfred von Karstein, I believe, on a horse. Yes, that's correct. So, and he's got good old Manfred. Now, a bit of an unusual build by my opponent, but not horribly so. And the extra flying that he's brought, generally I wouldn't recommend the Vargheist and whatnot, but against the Dwarfs, you have no fear of losing in the air, and it's going to give you all that extra mobility to take advantage of against the Dwarfs. Now, when we deployed, I deployed in one corner, him in the opposite, so you're going to see I'm going to go ahead and turn towards him and use the rock on the right to kind of anchor my position. So I start off firing at the Black Knights with my Grudge Thrower, just trying to soften them up a little bit as he works his way out around my flank, which I'm not even going to try to contest. Of course, he's going to do that with all of his cavalry, and I don't blame him for doing it, but I'm certainly not going to go out of my way to chase them down. I do leave my Hammerers with my Grudge Thrower, which in hindsight, I think I would have been better off just leaving a Longbeard back there, but we all make mistakes from time to time, and I did not account for him having so much flying and whatnot, because when I kind of put my composition together, I wasn't necessarily expecting that. So again, he's working out on the flanks. He's got his flyers coming around as well, and the main body of his infantry, and it looks like he makes a micro mistake here and ends up with Manfred kind of charging ahead of his entire army. So after eating a few shots from the Quarrelers, he's going to go ahead and pull him back with the rest of his line. Now, at this point, he's just kind of feeling me out. He's not attacking anything. His Black Knights he brought all the way back to the corner here. Looks like he's going to catch that in a little bit and get those guys moving. So a little bit of micro mistakes, but it's to be expected when you have 4 flying units, 2 cav, an infantry line that is composed of several different infantry. He's got his lord. He's got a lot of things going on. So as he makes his advance, my Quarrelers are going to get the fire. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of take the charge. I'm not going to counter charge, which in hindsight I probably should have with the hill advantage and the fact that a lot of the people they're engaging are not large, so my charge defense is not going to really do me any good. He brings in his flyers to attack. Looks like he's going to target Thorgrim, but more so the Quarrelers actually. So it looks like some bats are on Thorgrim there, but the vast majority are worried about taking out my Quarrelers, which is not a bad choice. He brings in his Black Knights as well as Direwolves against the Grudge Thrower, which is still firing as the Hammers are holding the line. Then he also brings in Vargheist, and this is going to be way too much for the Hammerers. And again, that's why I feel kind of leaving them back here not a good value. So definitely the mistake, my biggest mistake this game. So all of my range units are now currently engaged, with the exception of these Quarrelers in the center. So he's done a good job doing that. The Quarrelers are firing into all these attackers here. The front lines have engaged. Now this is where I feel things look good for me, because he brought all these flying units in the cavalry, so I knew his infantry line was going to be a little soft compared to mine, and that's definitely something I want to take advantage of. So I pull back the runesmith, one of the runesmiths, as well as the thane, kind of deal with all this back here. Not because I necessarily am worried about the quarrelers. They put up a decent fight, and they're going to trade decently with these flying units because they're so darn expensive. But rather, I'm just trying to avoid having a completely chaotic situation where my infantry are going to get surrounded. They're winning the fight up front, as you can see. A lot of people crumbling, some people gone entirely, and I don't want to jeopardize that position because a dwarf battle is almost always won right here. This is where everything's at. Unless you spend too much on your missiles, on your artillery, then you're in trouble. What you really want to do is focus on the infantry game. Thus the 2 runesmiths for the negation, and also the spells are pretty effective, especially against the vampires if they bring ethereal units, which my opponent did not. So the battle continues. These quarrelers are pretty badly beat up, but they reform. The grudge thrower does, but I don't even make an effort to reacquire. Right now, Thorgrim is in there. He's got 52 kills, doing a great job. The runesmith even is racking up some melee kills, as well as the thane, giving him a run for his money. And back here, my runesmith has 39 kills, facing off against a crew of zombies and direwolves, which just quite simply are not going to have enough punch to get into the armor of dwarfs. So I don't like those units against dwarfs. A little bit to get after my missiles, which he did, so that was a good use of these units. But after that, they're going to be worthless to him. They're simply not going to hang with the dwarfs. So his Graveguard are all but done over here. He brings in the Vargeist to support. A good choice. Looks like I'm a little sloppy with my micro there. My Longbeards need to get in action. Looks like I've commanded them to do so. Sometimes it's kind of weird. The dwarfs will get their formation interrupted like this, and it does happen to other factions. And you'll see like half of a unit in a battle, half out, or a couple of guys in and out. So you got to keep an eye out for that. But definitely looking good on my right flank. The Quarrelers are providing some support fire as well. Here, his Vargeists are all but done, being brought down by Thorgrim. On the far side, I've won most of this, and his Graveguard are just about to fail. And now he's pulling Manfred in an effort to turn the tide, using Undeath Resurgent to boost what he has left of his army. You're going to see here the balance of power is going to start to creep in my favor. I outnumber him on the field about 2-1, and most importantly, I have my 2 runesmiths still remaining. I have Thorgrim and my Thane, so I have lots of single units that are very strong and very much going to be able to stick it out through the battle. Again, he's moving Manfred around, trying to use him and his mobility to an advantage, charging into my dwarfs. But the stunties, while they can't charge themselves, they are quite good at dealing with it. Like, they really can take the punishment. And now Manfred finds himself very much alone, with the exception of his Fellbats, which he called back there, and he's quickly going to be dealt with, surrounded, and the battle will be over. Now, like I said, before the last 2 patches, this is probably a matchup I wouldn't take when it comes to quick battles on the ladder, simply because I don't want to eat the loss. But I really do feel the dwarfs are competitive enough now that this was worth giving a go, and I was very pleased with the results. Let's go ahead and take a look at how everybody did. This dwarf warrior had 100 kills, probably zombies, but still, that's crazy. When you think about what dwarf warriors were just before these patches, they were really not very useful at all as anything but a meat shield. But when you add the effects of the runesmith and Thorgrim, they get plus 16 melee attack, and all of a sudden they're usable. The Longbeards, lots of kills across the board. They did great. The Quarrelers, not as much, but they definitely served a purpose in eating up a lot of his flying units and also distracting them from being involved in the main battle. The Hammerers, even though they got swarmed, still managed to get 46 kills, but I definitely wouldn't call that cost effective. The Grudge Thrower as well, kind of underwhelming, but the infantry did so great, and so did the Thane and my 2 runesmiths. I mean, one of them had 73 kills. Guessing a lot of that came from the Rune of Ruin, but also their melee attack, they did quite well there. Thorgrim put down 73 himself. As far as my opponent, the Vargeist did okay, but probably not enough to justify their very high cost. The Crypt Horrors were pretty darn ineffective. Direwolves served their purpose okay. Fellbats okay. Black Knights, They did all right as well. As well did the Grave Guard. The zombies were a non-factor, and Manfred just did not assert himself enough on the battlefield. So good game to my opponent, but his unconventional build here. The great weapons are an obvious choice, but other than that, this is a little unconventional. I respect him for trying it, especially against the Dwarfs. He probably figured he could get away with it. Unfortunately, he didn't know the Dwarfs are a lot stronger, and I've got a great composition. And this army I like a lot. I'd love to hear your feedback on this Dwarf army. What would you do to improve it, to make it better? Is there some things out there that I'm not using that I should be? Like I said, put it in the comments. I'd love to know. Can't wait to talk to you guys about this. If you enjoyed the video, you learned something, please like, please subscribe. It helps me out a lot. So until the next time, this is the Magnus. Thanks, and take care.